Hello viewers, welcome back to the Nova Bus Fan. Hope you've all been doing well. This video is about the development of light rail in Quebec because over the last so many years we've been seeing a lot of this kind of development happening quite a bit across Canada, specifically in Ontario. We've seen a lot of them coming out of Ontario, whether it be the Brampton Ion Service, the Eglinton Crosstown in places, the Hurontario LRT, a whole bunch of them, especially in Ontario, that have succeeded, of course, and that are being built. And now we're seeing this similar development or similar proposals coming to Quebec, which is very interesting. Of course, Quebec is somewhat notorious for proposing a whole bunch of projects and then none of them ever happening and just kind of being mothballed and mothballed and mothballed. But I think we're on the cusp of something different happening, especially with the REM coming. Now the REM, of course, a lot of people will assume it's a light rail project. To an extent it is, to an extent it isn't. It's more like a metro with some light rail elements sprinkled in. But because of the REM, because of the development of the REM and how quickly it's coming along, I think a lot of people are starting to see the light in when it comes to actually proposing projects that can actually happen and be developed eventually. So that's what we're seeing slowly creeping into the scene, into the transit scene here in Quebec. Let's get into the four major proposed projects for light rail transit, not just in Montreal. We're going to focus on Montreal. I'm probably going to get to them last. But just to change it up, I've thrown in the other two quite big projects that are happening in the province that are outside the Montreal area. So without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, so the first project we're going to talk about is the Quebec City Tramway. Now this one has been proposed for many years. Actually, much like a few of these projects have been the longest time since proposal that this one's been floating around, but now is actually has a lot of concrete development funding committed and all that. This is part of Quebec's réseau structurant, or structure enhancing network, as they're considering it. So they're basically trying to redo their entire network around this tramway, which is an east to west tram link between the Cap Rouge and Charlebourg districts of Quebec City, which would include a couple of underground portions, one in the Sainte-Foy West sector and one right downtown Quebec City where the legislature or National Assembly is. It's mostly at grade, mostly a street running tramway, but there are some bits where it would need to be underground. So additional connections would also be included to a additional tram bus network, as they're calling it, trambus. I don't know if what they mean by tram bus is trolley buses or electric buses, or if they just mean a bus link that would be somewhat like a bus rapid transit system that would complement the tramway. But I don't know if it's going to involve any electrification. It's still a very interesting project. There's been investment of about $3 billion in it over the last few years. And construction is slated to start next year, actually in 2021, with a completion in 2026, entering into service as well. Kind of sounds like the Blue Line extension, about the same timeline. And yeah, this is probably the biggest one and probably the one that's most likely to begin, hence that's why I wanted to start with it, because I think it's the most likely thing to happen out of all four of these projects, at least in the short term. Next we move on to Quebec's neighbor to the nation's capital, Ottawa, which I'm sure, as you know, also happens to have a certain train called the O Train, the Confederation Line, of course, and of course the Trillium Line as well, but mainly the Confederation Line, which is their east-west light metro. So the Gatineau LRT would be very similar to the O Train, sort of a combination of the O Train and what Quebec City is trying to do. A lot more street-running elements, but when I say combination to the O Train, it also happens to mean connections to the O Train, which you would expect considering they're right across the river from each other. There may be two provinces, but they do share a lot of public transportation connections, which I've always found very interesting, very fascinating. So yeah, we have two connections that would be likely at the Bayview station and Rideau stations on the Confederation Line. So you would have a double connection point with this Gatineau LRT. There would also be sort of a U-shaped branch that would go north and then kind of curve back down towards the south, which would go towards their, and it's confusing, their Plateau district, which sounds like the Plateau Mont-Royal, but it's Gatineau. Pretty expensive network as well. Of course, also connectivity with their Rapidbus BRT. Very interesting. I find this one, this is why it's the second one I'm mentioning. Again, I'm kind of going in order of likelihood, I find. And yeah, this one is definitely more likely than the other two. I'd really like to see this one go through, especially Quebec City, but also this, because just the potential for connectivity with especially the O train across the river, and just developing the Ottawa-Gatineau region as a metropolitan area, as a much bigger metropolitan area, I think would be a very, very cool thing, and this would just be a step in the right direction. Next, we move back to the Montreal area, right down the street, close to home. Quite exciting to me, because I live literally about a 10-minute drive from where this line would start or end, actually, you would think about it. And that line is LEO, the Lien électrique Est-Ouest, or East-West Electric Link, if you want to directly translate it. So this is a tramway system that is proposed by the city of Longueuil. Would originate in Longueuil, around where the Edouard-Montpetit Cégep is, so along Chemin de Chambly near Saint-Charles, Vieux-Longueuil, that area. Would follow Saint-Charles by Terminus Longueuil or Longueuil Université de Sherbrooke metro station. Get to Taschereau and go Taschereau the whole rest of the way, past Panama, so connection to the REM, and would end at the border of Brossard-en-la-Prairie, where there's actually already a park and ride little bus terminal of sorts for Exo's Le Richelin service, which is my local bus area, by the way. Fun fact. This one's very early planning. This came out maybe last year, when Longueuil was talking about redoing their entire downtown area. And they've also presented this tramway idea, and it's a very good idea. I think the South Shore would greatly benefit from a rapid transit link like that, and they would also involve redoing the entirety of Boulevard Taschereau to be wider, to have a wider central point and have an increased public space as well to go with that, to accommodate the trains, but also maybe to add green space to that area. Just a complete revitalization, which I think is sorely needed, but I think this would be a really good idea in elevating the areas it passes through. That would just accommodate all this better space and just completely revitalize the whole boulevard, and I think that's a place that sorely needs it. And of course the South Shore could really benefit from all sorts of rapid transit development. I could say the same thing about the North Shore and Laval and all that, but you get the idea. I think that would be a great step in the right direction, and we could potentially see more developments like that in the rest of the Montreal area as a result. Our final project brings us back to the island of Montreal, and quite fittingly brings tramways back to the city of Montreal, which is pretty exciting if you think about it. Well, this project is, I call it the Crosstown Tramway, because it reminds me a lot of the Eglinton Crosstown if you're from Toronto, or if you've heard about Toronto's transit development as of late. It's this east-west crosstown LRT with a lot of tramway elements, but also some underground bits and some off-street running, more of like a tram train sort of thing. And by the looks of things, this is a lot of what this is going to be with this project. Now, we don't know specific details if there's going to be mostly street running, or if there's going to be underground bits, if there's going to be stuff that's elevated, kind of like the REM. We don't know yet. It's to be seen. It's just been proposed, but not much details that have come out of it yet. So basically, this is actually a combination of two projects. So the projects of the Lachine Tramway, which is of course the western part of it, starting in Lachine, following Notre Dame for most of its way, and heading into downtown. And then there's the Tramway de l'Est, which would start from downtown and head east out to Pointe-aux-Trembles, with a branch up Autoroute 25 out in the east, connecting to the Green Line and eventual Blue Line extension. And so instead of just having two separate lines, why not combine them? They ended basically in the same place, more or less. I think it's a major step forward in transit in Montreal if this were to happen. Now the REM is a huge one, but this would also be a very big one. You'd have a further east-west link that would link a lot more neighborhoods than just the metro would, as well as some northern connections as well, if you think about that branch on the A25, and of course it's just a lot cheaper than a metro line that would do a very similar thing. It would follow Notre Dame for most of its length. There's going to be connections to the metro. There's going to be a connection to the P9 BRT, or SRB P9, that's currently being built. I'm going to make a video about that eventually, by the way, so stay tuned. This would give the Montreal area 2 tramways, 4 metro lines, 5 commuter train lines, and the REM. Imagine, this would be a very big development in rapid transit in Montreal, barring some other extensions. Actually, if you want to know a bit more about that, I'll link you up to the video that I did in collaboration, which is very exciting, in collaboration with my friends Reese and Ellen at RM Transit. I actually talked about the future of transit in Montreal in that video, so if you want to check that out and see me on a different channel, weird, go for it. Like I said, there's not a lot of concrete stuff with that project, not like the other two. I found like the other 3. mainly Quebec City and Gatineau. I found like there's a lot more things that are concrete about those projects right now because they're the closest to being built, Quebec City in particular. So that concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I think it was a lot of fun to go through all these projects and to kind of dream of the future and think about what's coming. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I really think this is the start of something huge here in Quebec, where we're seeing finally some concrete development for different projects. Again, I think the REM really tipped this off. Now we're seeing the Blue Line extensions definitely going to happen, probably going to start construction next year. They've purchased land, funding has been secured, all that stuff. And then you have all these light rail projects that are popping up, which would be immensely great to further grow the metropolitan areas of Quebec, whether it be Montreal, Quebec City, Gatineau, Ottawa. So it's just really good, and I'm just really optimistic and looking forward to it. I'm generally an optimist when it comes to these things. I'm really hoping to see more developments spring off of these projects, whether these projects continue to move forward or other ones pop up to go with them, whether they be talking about REM extensions, talking about future metro extensions, future light rail systems, or rapid connections to other regions, helping to grow other regions, and that's what this is all about. That's been it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, definitely like, get subscribed, get notified, all that stuff. Consider supporting the Nova Bus Fan on Coffee. That's linked below as well if you want to buy me a cup of coffee to help support this channel and bring the quality up a bit more. I'm trying to do that. You can probably tell my lighting is pretty good. I actually have a light now, which is nice. And just continue to up the quality, up the consistency, and the quantity of content. That's been it. I hope you guys are doing well and continue to do well, and I hope to see you guys somewhere down the line, sometime soon, that is. Catch you guys later. Cheers.